This episode of the Media Leader podcast was edited by our production partner Trisonic. And if you're looking for podcast production support, we highly recommend them. Find them at trisonic.co.uk.
My experience as an independent is that the client themselves will tell you more stuff and they'll treat you more as a partner because you're not trying to sell them anything. You know, you're not trying to sell them the next media campaign. You're not trying to steer them towards your media partners who can get you a better deal and you can get more commission on them. So it can be a much more open and trusting relationship, actually, if you're an independent than if you're in a media agency.
Hello and welcome to the Media Leader podcast. I'm Omar Oakes, Editor-in-Chief, and I'm not at all jealous of anyone who is on the summer holidays right now. It's nearly August, but media and advertising chat does not stop for anything. Anyway, I do this for fun, if I could, have interesting conversations with the best and brightest in the industry. And today is no exception. Joining me today is Dr. Grace Kite, a business economist and founder of Magic Numbers and Magic Works. She is one of the industry's most respected voices on what makes advertising effective. Hello, Dr. Kite. Where does the podcast find you today?
Hello, lovely to be here. Thanks for inviting me. I'm in Brighton today, which is where I live.
Very nice. It's very cloudy, as is typical for late July in London. I assume by the coast it is there as well. But enough about that. Explain the listeners to anyone who doesn't know you, and they should. How did you get into this line of work? You're an economist by trade, but you spend all your time talking about what makes advertising effective.
Yeah, so I'm an economist and I did all my studies in economics. And the thing I found in my studies that I really loved was seeing how the world works using data. And one of the things that I've always been interested in is what makes real people tick. You know, what makes different people do the things they do and think the way they do and act the way they do. And I was overjoyed actually when I found a career that brought all of that together, which is analysing data to see patterns. But also it being really related to how people act. And that was doing market mix modelling in advertising and marketing. So ostensibly my job, and it has been for the last 25 years, is analyse data to see if advertising and marketing has worked and advise on what to do next. But what I've found as I've got into that career later is that I really like looking at the patterns across all the different businesses that I've worked with and see what does this tell you about how the world works. And so that's why I quite like to talk about the things that I've seen.
Yeah, and why specifically advertising, media, marketing? Why were you drawn to that in particular?
I think I'm like anyone really that wants to get that gets into marketing and advertising and media when they're in their 20s. It's quite cool, isn't it? Our industry. You know, you forget that when you're in the thick of it, but you know, making films and posters and lovely ads online, you know, it's quite a cool job to be in, and it's all about what makes people tick, and it's quite creative. And when I was in my 20s, I thought that would be fun. Actually, when I was in my 20s, the industry did have a bit more kind of outings and drinks and events and things, and I wanted to get involved in all of that.
Yes, it's definitely post-COVID anyway. There's maybe less of that than there was. The industry's changed a lot. But it's an exciting time for you in particular because breaking news, you've just sold your business, Magic Numbers. Tell us the details. Who have you sold it to and why?
So the story goes, and you know, Magic Numbers does market mix modelling. I founded it and grew it from being just one person in the loft in 2020 to where it is now, where once we got our new graduates in September, there'll be 25. And just in the space of 4 years, and it's a joyful place and something I'm very, very proud of. But because we'd had that success and it was quite kind of public, we would have quite a lot of different approaches from different businesses wanting to partner up with us. And I did a very sort of nerdy thing, which was to write a list of like, what would a partner have to be for it to be the right kind of partner for us? And I wanted a match in the values. Like Magic Numbers is very, very people focused in the way we do our work. And I wouldn't be able to join up with another business that wasn't at that same value. It's really, really important to us that analytics work's done very, very well so that clients can really rely on it. So totally robust, nothing shonky about the way we work. And we had to have a partner that was like that as well. And also, we were looking for access to really good kind of technology and tools for our clients. So we were looking for a partner that would be able to bring some of that we could then enable our clients to do more and more. And there were a range of other things, but so, over time, a lot of approaches, and I kind of said no because they didn't tick all the boxes, and then one came along that did. And I got to know the lovely founder, who is also a woman, and she's grown her business from the bottom up, from one person up to now 400 or 500 people all around the world. And we clicked, which was fantastic. And the company is Analytic Partners. Many in the UK may not know them that well, but they are an analytics business that's one of the largest in the world, based in the US, but with a presence in 55 different countries. They tried for a long time to crack the UK, but have never been able to do it. And that's where the partnership has come together.
And what's that going to mean going forward for you personally? Are you still going to be involved in the business? Are things going to change for you? How's it going to work?
I'm really committed to staying with the business. I'm very fond of the business that's, the business known as Magic Numbers, but also Magic Works, the training business. And, I'm excited about the courses that we're offering in October, as well as all the work we're doing in the analytics space, committed to our clients and to my team. So I'll be going nowhere. I'm planning to see this work really well and to see the benefits of this partnership that I've been planning for a while.
Very, very exciting. I just so the listener knows, we didn't actually plan to talk about this. Grace told me that you're about to announce this just before we jumped into the podcast studio. I usually was going to end the podcast by asking you things like biggest advice for company founders and things like that. But let me ask you now, because you're in this mode where you've been reflective about the business. A lot of people listening to this might have aspirations to start their own business one day and sell. Is that something that you plan to do from the start? Did you have like a runway for saying, I want to sell in 4 years? Because a lot of people think, wow, how did you manage to do that?
I surprised myself how quickly it happened. But I think partly that's to do with, the way that we present ourselves publicly, and we've got a strong brand and we actually engage in marketing. And that's something that I would say that many B2B businesses, which obviously we are, don't do as much as they could do, actually, is to have a solid brand and to go out there and market themselves and be something that's different and have a positioning and have all those things that B2C businesses do really, really well. And B2B businesses don't do that to the same extent, but we did. And that's part of what I attribute the success to. Lovely Tom Roach helped us do the brand positioning. We got a fabulous agency to kind of work with to have the look and feel. And it's just something that we in advertising and media and marketing, we know it works because we do it for our clients, but we don't do it for ourselves in the same way. And that's one thing I would massively, massively recommend to anyone in our industry to consider, because it's been a real force for progress for us. And I know it's a bit of a cliche because people always say, it's not just, it's the team, the team and the people that are involved that are the most important. But my other top tip would be to never hire anyone if someone in your team hears a no in their head or their heart or their gut. And I've stuck with that throughout. And we've gone through periods where we haven't had enough people. We have had to turn down work where we've waited for the right hires. And we've waited until the person came along that everybody who was on our side said yes or felt yes about this person. And that's another thing that stood me in fantastically good stead, because I have a fantastic team behind me, and this success is their success as much as mine, if not more so.
Yeah, I think there's two powerful bits of advice that, in my experience anyway, that people maybe underappreciate. So number one, the power of marketing yourself, and A, not being shy to do it, but B, working with the right people to help you do that. I think particularly if you start a business or you're going freelance, it can almost seem a bit mucky. People shy away from doing that and they hope that the work speaks for itself, but often it doesn't. It's a competitive, crowded marketplace and people do need to stand out. It's really important. And I think in terms of the brand positioning you mentioned as well, it can also help clarify what you want to do as a business as well. It's like, okay, if we can't actually distill this into a key marketing message, then are we actually sure what we're doing internally? And that helps you position yourself in terms of the work you want to do and the values you want to create. And also, I completely hear you on the hiring piece as well. It's particularly if you want to grow quickly, it's so tempting just to hire people junior level and we'll train them. And then suddenly you found that you're spending all your time on training and developing and not actually being able to do the work itself, whereas you actually just waited for quote unquote the right person. It might take a bit longer, it might be more uncomfortable, you might have to turn down work in the short term, but in terms of getting to where you need to go as a business ultimately, you might have to have that trade-off. Really interesting. Okay, let's talk about more generally in terms of effectiveness. So you've been busy. You've been at Cannes Lions. What were you doing there? What did you think about it? In our previous episode, we talked to Lawrence Green, IPA Effectiveness Director. Some very interesting things. Please listen to that previous podcast, listeners. But what were your impressions about effectiveness on the global scale, the big stuff?
It was great, actually, and I'm glad you spoke to Lawrence. He helped organise the session that I spoke in, which was about different aspects of effectiveness that have maybe dropped off the agenda or maybe not talked about as much as they should be. And I talked particularly about the role that strong brands and brand building can have in allowing you to charge a bit more and so make more profit effectively. There was also discussion about use of humour and about kind of balancing different targets and for profit and planet and sustainability. So that was our session. And I think the pricing point is a really important one. That has always been the case, right? That a strong brand will buy you the opportunity to charge a bit more. You've got to look in any supermarket around the world and the stronger brands sell for more, right? It's just there everywhere. But you forget about it in the marketing department. And actually what's happened over the last sort of couple of years is we've had this period of inflation. And actually the city analysts have had this moment where they go, actually, we've seen that everybody had to put their prices up, but those that had a strong brand, well, the customers stayed. Those that didn't, the customers didn't. And so we're now in this position where there's some evidence for it. There's some really clear evidence for it.
I can't believe that marketing department, this is quite stunning to hear you say this. I can't believe the marketing departments, they undervalued the fact that building a strong brand means you can charge more. How do you think that that's happened?
I think it's stunning, isn't it? Because I actually have looked at the evidence on this recently, and it's the biggest money benefit of advertising, being able to charge more, because it goes straight to profit. And actually the magnitudes involved, if you look on averages across lots of different cases, the magnitudes involved are kind of, it's a lot more profit from being able to put your price up because you've got a stronger brand than the actual additional sales that you get just from doing those ads. So, and your point's a good one. Like, why have we forgotten this? Why are we kind of having these conversations with finance directors where we're saying, oh, well, it'll increase sales by 1% or 5% or maybe even 10%, when we could be saying it will be increased profits by that much? And it'd be a much stronger conversation if we were talking about price. And I think part of what's happened is that the marketing department's remit doesn't really include price a lot of the time. And marketing seems to be across the table from the people who are talking about price or price promotions or price increases. It's different departments, and they're both after the same resources of the organisation. So they're kind of pitted against each other in some departments, rather than going, let's work together to have a better price and a stronger brand and to win kind of as a joint forces.
And by the way, do you think that's a UK phenomenon, or do you think it's happening in other markets as well?
I think it's in my experience, it's everywhere in our clients' finance across the world. It's finance that has control over price and marketing that has control over advertising, and that they think differently to one another, and that the kind of joined up discussions and planning kind of can fall by the wayside sometimes.
Yeah. So when you were talking to people at Cannes Lions, or more generally, what are the big trends you're seeing in terms of the work? What's changing, particularly in terms of effectiveness?
So it's interesting, actually, because I've gone to Cannes a few times, and this year was the first time that I really felt like my tribe, the effectiveness tribe, was there. I did a lovely talk with Tom Roach and Les Binet last year, and I was just aware that I was talking to creative agency people rather than, people who are kind of concerned in a day-to-day of their job with effectiveness. And I think that's a really big there's a really a big change that's been happening since Walk have been part of the Essential and Can family, and they're calling it the creative impact. I think impact goes down better than effectiveness in the US and in some parts of the world. So it's impact, but the creative impact stream was quite substantial and well attended this year. So, and I'm pleased about that. I think it's as it should be. Much more, does it work then?
Yeah.
Coming into Cannes.
Yeah. We're just recording a few days away from the IPA effectiveness shortlist, which is due to come out. And speaking to Lawrence Green last week, he highlighted this trend he's seeing of more media agency work being submitted. And the reason for that, he explained, is because media agencies, increasingly, they're the ones who are doing the MMM, the econometric analysis. They have the data people in place already to help them do this work. Is that something that you are finding in your work as well, that maybe are you talking to more media agency people, departments? Is media becoming more important as a focus for what makes effectiveness good effectiveness?
Actually, far be it from me to disagree with Lawrence, because I've got all the time in the world for that man. He's very, very smart. But I would say that actually the numbers people and the MMM is moving out of media agencies and into independents. The reason being that a lot of clients are now really conscious about media agencies marking their own homework. And what we're seeing, and it's been part of that beneficial trend, which I was telling you about earlier on as an independent, our new larger audiences, larger organisation, analytic partners, they're independent too from media agencies. And that's the part of MMM that's growing very, very fast at the moment, rather than MMM within media agencies. But, it's true that the effectiveness awards are changing. They are obviously a subset of the effectiveness in the whole world. And I think part of what's happening is that, media agencies are needing to make their case a bit more. So they're entering a bit more as the world is changing around media agencies. Same with creative agencies; they still need to make their case, and many of them, are having some struggles. So, I think those are the types of businesses that really need to do their own marketing, so they do enter awards.
And so when the work is being done by those third parties, what are you finding that maybe you wouldn't get from a media agency?
It's actually, I've worked in media agencies doing analytics before, and there's a lot of fantastic people doing really good work in those settings. My experience as an independent is that the client themselves will tell you more stuff, and they'll treat you more as a partner if you're an independent, because you haven't got any. You're not trying to sell them anything, you're not trying to sell them the next media campaign. You're not trying to steer them towards your media partners who can get you a better deal and you can get more commission on them. So there's a lot more openness, because they know without any shadow of a doubt that you're only there and only being paid if you do this analytics in a way that's useful for them. So it can be a much more open and trusting relationship, actually, if you're an independent than if you're in a media agency.
Do you think that's a big concern for media agencies, where they feel like the perception is they're always trying to sell something, that they maybe don't always have that objective, that honest broker role to play?
I think it's a bit of a worry, yeah, and I think where it comes from is the sort of D2C type businesses that are now more and more of the. Well, you'll know this, more and more of the media spend is coming from those kind of digital first or sell online first type of business. And those guys have a kind of DIY type of aesthetic, or that's the way they go about things. They're used to having their own data. Even the founder knows the numbers and, all of those things. And I think those guys are the ones that kind of look at media agencies and go, well, they, first of all, a lot of them don't even have a media agency. They just do it themselves. And then secondly, they go, well, why would I want the media agency to evaluate their own work? Surely they're more comfortable with that hub and spoke kind of model where they just take different experts for the things they need or do the rest themselves. So that's where it's coming from. And I think it's actually a really big shame because there are, as I said, very good people at media agencies that are very honest, and they're not trying to pull the wool over anyone's eyes. But I do think that there is this trend that's happening where analytics is going into more independence than media agencies.
Yeah. And on the flip side, what do you think maybe are the biggest myths or misconceptions around the work that you do, particularly from my vantage point? I studied economics at university, so I know how difficult econometrics can be. What do you think are some misconceptions around what you do?
I think different people have it in, different misconceptions. But one of the things that I kind of want to change as a conception that people have is that it's this kind of scary black box that's too technical for me to understand if I'm just a normal person that didn't love maths at school. And my sense is all the clients that we work with, they're smart enough to get it if it can be explained in a simple way. And one of the things that we work really hard in our team to do is explain things in a simple way so people can understand them. And I think this idea that if I go into this doing this analytics, it'll be scary and I'll feel really uncomfortable and I'll never know whether this thing they're telling me is true. I've just got to trust that they've done it in the way that makes sense. That can feel uncomfortable, particularly when the results are like, oh, your poster campaign's not working that well, and you're the person that did the poster campaign. It affects you personally and professionally to hear this results of this thing. And so the conception that we really want to battle, I guess, is that it's sort of scary and dangerous and, something that will make me end up feeling stupid and looking bad.
Yeah. When you mention, you use an example of my poster campaign not working very well, there must be various trends you've seen over the years where use of particular channels is higher than it should be or lower than it should be. Are there any top lines that you found over the years?
Yeah, I think one of the things that's really interesting to me is that every client that we're meeting has been used to having TV as something, as a real cornerstone of their campaigns and something that helps them to build their brands. And the aggregate figures show that actually that's still maintained, like TV spend isn't really dropping. But what's happening is that the audiences that are in TV are changing and aging, and in some ways, and in many places getting smaller. And so a lot of businesses are going, well, what should we do instead, stroke as well, to really bolster what we're doing around that? And one of the really interesting things I think is the role of online video and how that becomes part of the media plan to reach those audiences that are harder to reach with different, with traditional channels.
And when you say video, there's so many different types of video formats nowadays, whether it's YouTube skippable versus non-skippable, whether it's all the CTV stuff emerging on different platforms. How do you see CTV in particular going forward in terms of which formats might be generally more effective than others?
One of the really key things is default sound on. So that way we see something like YouTube where default sound is on outperforming something like Meta where the default sound is off for video. So there's quite a stark difference between those two things. And there's only so much you can do with a default sound off, and when someone's kind of thumbing through their feed rather quickly on Meta. And then there's more you can do in terms of building memorable associations to your brand and your product if it's something where they're compelled to sit and watch it if they want to see the video that they want to see, and the default sound is on. So we're seeing that there's differences there, but actually there's still a lot of room for learning and improvement in the way that these channels are used for brand building particularly. And I think one of the things that's really important is just recognizing that if you can't get people to watch a 30-second TV ad, which maybe you can't always nowadays if certain types of audiences, then actually their experience with your brand and your campaign is going to be lots and lots of little exposures. And I think that some of the skills of the future is the best marketers will be able to leverage lots of little exposures to make something big out of it. And I think that's going to be the marketing skill of the future.
Interesting to say skills of the future. So even I get asked this a lot. Artificial intelligence, how are you using it? What do you think is going to happen? Are you already using AI in your business to some degree, or do you have thoughts about how you might plan to use AI in future?
Well, we don't believe actually that with the current state of AI, the modelling that we do can be automated. AI isn't good enough for that yet. And we have looked into it. And interestingly, analytic partners looked into it separately and came up with the same answer. So we're completely aligned on that. Where we are currently using it is to manage the knowledge base. Because both companies have databases of effectiveness results across lots and lots of industries and lots of verticals and all around the world in their in analytic partners' experience. I have to get used to calling it us instead of them and us. That's the mission for this week. But we're starting to use artificial intelligence to mine that for the benefit of our clients. Those databases and that learning.
Yes, and what advice would you have? You did the advice for founders. What advice would you have more generally, just for anyone who's starting out in this industry?
I think just be curious, really. That stood me in really good stead is to ask good questions and think about good questions, so that whenever you do get a bit of time with somebody that's more senior, or whenever you come into a situation where there's an opportunity for you to learn, be ready for that. Think about what the learning opportunities are and then grasp them. That stood me in good stead throughout my career and when I was newly into the industry, but even still now. And I like to be on the steep bit of the learning curve, and I'd advise a lot of people to try and get on that for some part of their week every week.
Yeah, absolutely. Particularly in a world where we're not all coming to the office as much as we were. You just want to, when you're in the office, and particularly someone who's just started out, you want them to be full of questions, and you just want to see somebody who's not kind of burdened with, the baggage and experience and jadedness, to kind of just ask kind of really simple questions about how do we do this and why do we do this. But I'd like that anyway. But
yeah.
Anyway,
agree.
And so, Grace, what's the best way to follow what you're doing at Magic Numbers?
So I'd suggest to listeners, if they're interested in effectiveness, to follow me, Grace Kite, on LinkedIn. We're publishing lots of interesting content about effectiveness all the time. And also we've got 2 courses coming up in October. One is all about how to get your online marketing budget right and to not waste any money in your performance marketing and not get misled by last click attribution. The other one's all about data storytelling and all the data skills that you need in marketing department to be able to use marketing data really, really well. They're both coming on in October. So check out magicworks.training if that's something that sounds of interesting to you.
All right. Thank you very much. That's all the time we have. Thank you so much to Dr. Grace Kite for joining us today. If you want to hear more from the brightest thinkers in our industry talking about how to get the most out of advertising from a media planning or effectiveness point of view, check out previous episodes we've done in the last month. Lawrence Green, Les Burnett. In the last year, we've also talked to Peter Field, Karen Nelson-Field, Mike Follett on the podcast. Lots of summer holiday listening. Thank you very much, Dr. Grace Kite.
Pleasure.
Thank you for listening to the Media Leader podcast. This episode was edited by our production partners, Trisonic. You can find and listen to all our episodes on our website at themedialeader.co.uk or wherever you get your podcasts. But just remember, please do subscribe to be notified when we release our next episode. From all of us at The Media Leader, I'm editor Omar Oakes. Our executive producer is Jack Benjamin. See you next time.